Alright, listen up, you lot. This is a true blue horror story that happened to a family called the Perrons back in the early 1970s. They were a big family, mum, dad, and their 5 Sheilas, and they thought they'd found their dream home in the countryside of Rhode Island in the good old US of A. It was a bit of a fixer-upper, an old farmhouse, but they were stoked about the space and the peace and quiet, you know? But right from the get-go, things felt a bit dodgy. Like, not quite right, you know? They'd hear these weird noises, like someone walking around upstairs when no one was there. Doors would creak open on their own. Nothing major at first, just enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up a bit, eh? The kids started saying they saw things too, little shadows flitting about, that sort of thing. The parents, Roger and Carolyn, tried to brush it off, saying it was just an old house settling or the kids' imaginations running wild. But deep down they had a bit of a funny feeling about the place, like something wasn't quite kosher. As the weeks went by, the weird stuff went from being a bit unsettling to being fair dinkum freaky. The noises got louder, more insistent. It wasn't just creaking anymore. It sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor, or someone banging on the walls like they were trying to get out. One of the daughters, Andrea, reckoned she saw this ghostly figure in her room one night. Just standing there staring, she chucked a wobbly, as you can imagine, and it wasn't just her. The other kids started seeing things too, whispers in the dark, cold spots in the house, even the smell of rotten meat sometimes, even though there was no meat around. How bizarre. Carolyn, the mum, started getting really spooked. She said she felt like she was being watched all the time, and sometimes she'd feel a cold breath on her neck when she was all alone. That'd give anyone the heebie-jeebies, wouldn't it? Now this is where things get really out there. The Perrons eventually contacted these paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren. You might have heard of them. They're pretty famous for looking into haunted places. Anyway, the Warrens did their digging and found out some seriously creepy history about the farmhouse. Turns out, back in the 18th century, the land belonged to this woman named Bathsheba Sherman. And get this, she was rumored to be a witch. There were all sorts of nasty stories about her, including one where she was accused of sacrificing her own baby to the devil. Stone the crows, can you believe that? The Warrens believed that Bathsheba's spirit was still attached to the land and the house, and that she was the one causing all the mayhem. They reckoned she was particularly nasty to Carolyn, the mum, for some reason. Talk about a bad housemate. Things went from spooky noises and shadowy figures to proper physical stuff. The kids would get their legs pulled when they were in bed. Furniture would move on its own. One time, Carolyn said she was actually lifted out of her bed by some unseen force. That's enough to make you want to pack your bags and scarper, right? Roger, the dad, was a bit more of a skeptic at first, but even he couldn't deny what was happening after a while. He saw things with his own eyes, felt the cold spots, heard the unexplainable noises. It was driving him bonkers. The Warrens even held seances in the house, trying to communicate with whatever was there. Apparently, during one of these seances, Carolyn became possessed by something. Her voice changed, her body contorted, and she started speaking in a language no one understood. It was a real horror show according to everyone who was there. The Perron family lived in that house for over 10 years, and they reckoned they copped a real beating from whatever was haunting them. It wasn't just the scary encounters. It was the constant feeling of being watched, the never-ending tension, the fear for their kids. They tried everything, blessings, talking to priests, even just trying to ignore it. But nothing seemed to work. The activity would come and go in waves, but it was always there, lurking in the background, making their lives a living hell. Poor buggers. Eventually they managed to sell the house and move out. They never spoke much about their experiences for a long time, probably because no one would have believed them anyway. But later on, they started sharing their story, and it's become one of the most famous and well-documented cases of a real-life haunting. Go figure, eh? The Perron family's story is a real eye-opener, isn't it? It makes you think twice about those bumps in the night. Even though they moved out, they say the memories of what happened in that farmhouse still haunt them to this day. It'd play on your mind, wouldn't it? And the farmhouse? Well, it's still standing there. Other families have lived in it since the Perrons, and some of them have reported experiencing strange things too. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe Bathsheba is still kicking about, causing trouble, Gives me the willies just thinking about it. Alright, gather round. Let me take you back in time to a story that has puzzled people for decades. This one's a real head-scratcher. A true story straight from the snowy wilderness of Russia, where the landscape is as mysterious as the events that unfolded there. In 1959, 9 university students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a hiking expedition through the rugged and remote Ural Mountains, eager for challenge and discovery. Young, fit, and experienced, they were chasing adventure, determined to test their limits, and planning to reach the icy, forbidding summit of Mount Otorten, a place few dared to go. But when they didn't return as scheduled, a search team was sent out, and what they found was nothing short of baffling. The students' tent was discovered ripped open from the inside. Their belongings were still inside, but the group had vanished into the freezing night, barefoot and barely dressed. Now that's odd, isn't it? Days after the hikers vanished, a search team braved the harsh winter conditions and finally discovered the missing group. Their bodies were found scattered across the snow, some distance from their abandoned tent, as if they had fled in a panic into the freezing wilderness. Some of the hikers were lying peacefully, almost as if they had simply fallen asleep and quietly frozen to death, their faces calm and undisturbed by violence. Others, however, bore injuries so severe, fractured skulls, shattered ribs, and internal trauma, that investigators compared the force to a car crash, far beyond what a human could inflict. Yet, despite the chaos, there were no footprints leading to or from the scene, no sign of enemies, and no evidence of a struggle. Only a haunting, unexplained silence in the snow. One hiker was even missing her tongue and eyes. Strange, right? The official reports couldn't explain how or why it happened. The Soviet authorities ruled it an unknown compelling force. That's enough to give anyone goosebumps. Over the years, people have offered all sorts of theories to explain the Dyatlov Pass Incident, each more intriguing than the last. The mystery has inspired endless speculation, with amateur sleuths and experts alike trying to piece together what really happened on that remote, snowy mountain. Some reckon it was an avalanche that forced the hikers out of their tent in panic, sending them fleeing into the freezing night without proper clothing or supplies, ultimately leading to their tragic fate. Others suggest secret military experiments in the area, perhaps involving new technology or weapons, might have played a role in the mysterious deaths, fueling rumors of a government cover-up. Some even point to high-frequency sound waves caused by wind and mountain shapes, known as infrasound, which could trigger intense confusion, panic, and fear, driving the hikers to act irrationally in the darkness. But none of these theories fully explain the injuries or the way the group acted that night. To this day, no one knows for sure what scared those young adventurers enough to tear out of their tent into the deadly cold. Even now, decades later, the Dyatlov Pass remains one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. New studies, books, and documentaries keep trying to piece together the truth, but the full story may have been lost with those 9 hikers. Today, hikers still visit the site, and a small memorial marks the spot. A reminder of a journey that started as an adventure, but ended as one of history's coldest, strangest puzzles.